I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the public assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The suspect, Luigi Mangione, a young man born into wealth, educated at prestigious private schools, and formerly working in the tech industry. Here's the story. On December 4th, 2024, United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was shot dead on a midtown Manhattan sidewalk in a high-profile assassination that stunned Wall Street and Washington. Surveillance video shows a masked gunman strike Thompson as he arrived for a conference, then flee into the city streets. A 5-day manhunt ended with the capture of 27-year-old Luigi Mangione at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where officers found a loaded magazine, a 9mm handgun, ammunition, silencer, and notebook in his backpack. All items prosecutors say tie him to the killing. Ballistics tests reportedly matched the weapon to shell casings at the scene. Mangione has pleaded not guilty and is fighting to suppress that evidence, arguing the search violated his rights. From court galleries to online forums, Mangione has garnered unusual support from people critical of the health insurance industry and concerned about overreach in his prosecution, creating an odd public divide as both federal and state cases loom. So, he's been in court with his attorneys. Prosecutors have been there. There's a big, important hearing taking place where Mangione is trying to keep some evidence out of the case, like some really important evidence. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, who's been going through all of this. All right, let's go through it specifically. What specific evidence here is the defense trying to suppress from the trial?
Well, Vinny, ultimately, they're trying to suppress some very key evidence and statements from Mangione's state trial in New York, arguing that all this evidence was obtained unconstitutionally through unwarranted searches and violations of his Miranda rights. Pretty much a violation of the Fourth Amendment, if we're looking at it legally like that, when searching the backpack that was on him at the McDonald's once he was arrested. So let's walk through a list of some of the stuff that they obtained from that backpack. So we start off with the gun. Of course, the gun that's allegedly used in the assassination of Brian Thompson, supposedly a 3D printed firearm as well, which is interesting, but that is the gun that they obtained into evidence. And then we move along to the silencer and the ammunition. Now, having this silencer, that, looking from the prosecution's angle, that could suggest a plan trying to keep things discreet if you were to go try and shoot somebody. And of course, we know the ammo matches the casing that were also found at the scene. Now, Vinny, we move along to the red notebook that was found in the backpack. Now, this notebook contains his alleged manifesto that prosecutors say pretty much details his whole plan and the reasoning behind it, behind shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And so then, Vinny, they took a bunch of other little writings and scribbles that Mangione had in his backpack, including this to-do checklist. Now, this to-do list had handwritten escape routes and hand-drawn maps. The checklist mentions looking at flights across the Midwest from Pittsburgh. It mentions buying certain shoes that aren't too distinguishable. It also mentions plucking his own eyebrows, Vinny, which is very interesting because those very distinguishable eyebrows are what kind of got him caught up at the McDonald's where he ultimately got arrested. And then we move on to just some other items in the backpack, Vinny. And speaking of eyebrows, you can see on this image here on the screen, there's a lot of grooming supplies that was obtained out of the backpack. The MacBook here. He also had a pocket knife and zip ties and batteries and all other sorts of things there. He had face mask and a lighter, more bullets we can see on the screen there, AirPods, just a lot of different things, Vinny. There's a blue camera in the top left of the screen there too. Now, Vinny, that's the stuff that was taken from the backpack. They also want to try to suppress statements he made to police upon his arrest at the McDonald's, him giving the fake name as Mark Rosario. They say that these statements are a violation of his rights because they didn't read him his Miranda rights before they started questioning him. So that's pretty much a list of everything they want to suppress, Vinny. And, looking at this list, especially the things that were found in the backpack, this is just about every piece of overwhelming evidence that the prosecution needs in this case. So it'll be interesting to see what the judge rules here as far as the evidence that will be admissible.
Yeah, absolutely crucial. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation tonight. Can prosecutors win this case without this evidence? All the evidence Cody just went through. If that gets suppressed by the judge says, yeah, violated his constitutional rights, it's not coming in, jury's not going to see it, can prosecutors still win this case? Joining me, New York criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Chase Brown, and former prosecutor, criminal defense attorney at Gelman Law, David Gelman. Great to have you both here. Chase, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts here? If, and we're presuming, right? We're presuming the judge suppresses this stuff. Not coming in, jury's not getting it. Can prosecutors still win this case?
That's a very, very interesting question. The answer is I would say no. The fact that he's found with the gun, that gun is tied to the scene with the shell casings and this manifesto, because in a case like this, it's going to come down to ID, right? Is he the one who actually committed this murder? So finding him with that gun, finding him with that manifesto, which includes planning and how to go about this, if you lose all that, it makes it very tough. And a jury, you need to show them a murder weapon. And if you have no murder weapon in the gun, it's similar to, if you don't have a body, how do you have a murder? So it's very, very tough. I think that the case it's detrimental if this evidence is suppressed to the prosecution's case.
David Gelman, what are your thoughts here? This evidence doesn't come in. You don't get the bullets. You don't get the manifesto that you can't call a manifesto anyway. You don't get the mask. You don't get all the notes that he wrote. Can you still win the case with the video of the murder, with the video at Starbucks, with the DNA on the water bottle?
Vinny, it's just like anything else in the law. The answer is maybe. Now, look, not having this evidence, it's not going to be great for the prosecution. You'd love to have the gun. You'd love to have the bullets, the manifesto, all the things that were found in the backpack. However, if you don't have it, you do still have some other ammo, literally. You have the video like you were talking about. You have DNA. You do have some of his statements if and when the judge will allow them to come into play. So you do have these things, and the identity is going to be a big issue, obviously. Look, this is a huge, huge case. Has national interest in it. Everybody knows about it by now, probably. So I still think that the prosecution still would have a shot, but not having that information, not having that evidence, it's not going to be the easy path that the prosecution would think they would have.
It becomes extremely circumstantial, right? Like you have some direct evidence from that red notebook. You could say some of that stuff is arguably a confession. So Chase, let me ask you this. When it comes to making the decision for the judge, right? Like the judge is a human being. The judge knows the impact of this ruling on whether or not this evidence comes in. The judge knows that if you suppress this evidence, like you said, there is a chance that this guy walks. Does that, from your perspective, do you think that impacts the way judges will look at something, especially in a case of this nature? Or do you trust, and I'm not saying just this judge, I'm saying like judges in general. Do you trust that, hey, they look at it and they call it based upon nothing but the evidence relative to this particular search and how it went down, not seeing the big picture or taking that into effect?
I have utmost faith in the oath that a judge would take, and any judge across the state. They're going to look at the evidence. They're going to look at the legal arguments that each side's going to make as to why it shouldn't be suppressed or why it shouldn't be suppressed. No one case is worth it, as I like to say. So they're going to stick. I mean, again, they are human beings, but they're going to stick by the oath they took to follow the law and the arguments and the case law that's out there as to whether the search is legal or not. I understand there are huge implications around this case. It is getting the attention in the press. But I think that I have faith that they will stick by, what the law says should be done here.
All right. So David Gelman, what are your thoughts here? Is this one where this evidence is at risk at this point of not being part of the trial?
There's certainly some parts of it, that I think might be suppressed. There was like 30-something cops that have testified so far in a suppression hearing, which is insane. I mean, I've never had a suppression hearing that had 30 individuals that were witnesses. I've had 2 or 3 at most, 4, and it doesn't last for a week for a suppression hearing. So look, there's definitely some evidence that may be suppressed. But I also want to make the point, Vinny, that whatever the judge decides, you don't think that this is going to be appealed. Whoever loses is going to be appealing this decision, because anything that the judge rules, it's going to be critical for either side. So there's going to be an appeal one way or another.
Does that slow down the case, or does the case go forward regardless of the appeal? Will it be appealed just of the issue, or will it be something at the end of the case? Because prosecutors, if it's a not guilty, they can't do anything.
That's exactly it. Look, I would assume it's probably going to hold up the case if they're appealing a evidentiary ruling, because they're going to have to ask for a stay to appeal it to the higher level. So I would think that you would have to, pause this case, let the higher court decide what, if the judge made the right call or not, and then it would have to go back to the lower court. So yeah, this would definitely postpone a couple things.
All right, Chase Brown, I'm going to give you a promotion but a pay cut. You're the judge here. Are you going to suppress this evidence? Do you think the police did the right thing?
I think they did. I'm not going to suppress the evidence. I think this is a clear search incident to lawful arrest. When he gives a fake name, they then search his immediate belongings. They're not going into his phone. They're not going into his computer. They're searching essentially his grab area, and that's a classic, in my opinion, search incident to lawful arrest. The statements as well. I mean, it's basic investigative questions. They're conducting an investigation. It hasn't risen to the level of a clear custodial interrogation, which are the words that would trigger suppression here. So I think it all comes in, unfortunately for the defense and fortunately for the prosecution.
Justice Gelman, do you concur?
I have to agree with Chase. I don't think they did anything wrong. This was exigent circumstances. You're talking about a dangerous individual they were looking for. They had to make sure that in that backpack there wasn't any bombs or anything that could cause harm to anybody else. And that's what the law says, that you can do that search incident to arrest, as Chase was saying. So I do think that the evidence will stay in. I think the statements will stay in.
All right. Our guests are going to stick around. They're staying in also. Coming up next, is it surprising that Luigi Mangione got caught so easily?
I want to be clear. At this time, every indication is that this was a premeditated, pre-planned, targeted attack.
The disappearance of mother Anna Walsh.
Her husband now charged with her murder.
All eyes on this accused killer.
Mr. Walsh was suspecting his wife of having an affair.
The massive trail of evidence.
This incredible timeline of Google searches.
It shows everything that was in his mind.
He searched how long before a body starts to smell.
The disappearance of Anna Walsh murder trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Good morning, everyone. In Midtown Manhattan early this morning, 50-year-old Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, was shot and killed in what appears, at this early stage of our investigation, to be a brazen, targeted attack. This does not appear to be a random act of violence. The suspect approached from behind and fired several rounds, striking the victim at least once in the back and at least once in the right calf.
And they were right. It was a targeted attack, according to prosecutors, right? If you believe Mangione did it, if you believe the manifesto, if you believe the videos and the DNA and all the other evidence. But if you don't believe it, then maybe it's not him. But there was a lot of planning that went into this, and a lot of, looking ahead, figuring it out, and this wasn't very spontaneous. There was a lot that went into this, yet he was captured. Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Let's talk about that capture, about exactly how that went down and how it was that Mangione got caught when he was on the lam.
Well, yeah, Vinny, we all remember that 5-day manhunt in December of 2024, from December 4th to December 9th, pretty much from when Brian Thompson was shot up until when Mangione was ultimately arrested in that McDonald's in Pennsylvania. But that manhunt and that search, Vinny, started in New York's Central Park. We see some images of the search there now because this is where police believed Mangione fled through to evade everyone on a city bike directly after he shot, or allegedly shot, Brian Thompson. So then, Vinny, as the days went on, we started to see these pictures of the alleged suspects circulating the internet, circulating social media. Now remember, people were seeing these pictures everywhere, but we still did not know who this person was. This is just who the police suspected was at fault for this shooting. But no name attached to these images, just the images themselves. So then we fast forward, Vinny, then came his arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania, in the McDonald's after customers there were convinced that a man they saw, this man sitting here in these pictures, a man they saw dining inside was the suspect. And you can see in these surveillance photos here, Vinny, this might have been his downfall here, that he was pulling his mask down to enjoy his hash brown. So that was upon his arrest in the McDonald's. So customers eventually, as they're sitting there looking at him, sitting back there, they eventually pressed an employee to call the police. Take a listen to that 911 call.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
It's not really an emergency. I'm a manager at Plank Road McDonald's out here on the Boulevard.
Okay.
And I have a customer here that some other customers were suspicious of, that he looks like the CEO shooter from New York.
Okay.
So they're just really upset, and they're like coming to me, and I was like, well, I can't approach him, you know?
No, of course not.
So Vinny, police naturally showed up. Maybe they weren't sure it was the CEO shooter, but they showed up because they got this call. Take a look at how it all went down.
Yes, sir. There you go. Here, put your mask down real quick for me. Yeah, sure. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. What's your name? Mark. What is it? Mark. Mark? Yes, sir. Mark what? Rosario. Rosario? Someone called. They thought you were suspicious. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have your ID on you? Yes, sir. Thanks. I thought she looked like someone. You don't need to. You want to run? Where are you from? Player 6, 2729 out of New Jersey. Romeo 6807 521 07982. Should come back to a month. Rosiano.
So Vinny caught while he was sitting there enjoying his hash brown in that McDonald's with his mask off, but then eventually giving police that fake name of Mark Rosario. Now remember, no one in the country knows who he is at this point. They don't know his name is Luigi Mangione, so that poses the question, if he had given his real name, I wonder if police would have just let him go right there at that point.
Yeah, if it all squared up, or if they actually recognized his face based upon the images that were out there. Fantastic, unbelievable moment, right? So casual, all of it. And with all this planning, caught eating a hash brown at McDonald's, brings us to the next question in our investigation. Is it surprising Luigi Mangione got caught so easily? Identified by a member of the public because he's pulling down the mask, eating the hash brown with the big eyebrows. Here to help answer that question, host of the Outlier podcast and Pop Crime TV reporter Lauren Conlon is with us, and Dr. Robbie Ludwig, nationally known psychotherapist, author, and host of The Pivot with Dr. Robbie Ludwig on YouTube. Great to have you both here. Dr. Robbie, I'm going to start with you, getting into his mind. Like, we know he's super smart, super brilliant, all of that, meticulous in the planning, right, allegedly, and yet is at a McDonald's, doesn't get it to go, sits in the corner with his back to the wall so anyone that walks in can see him. Are you surprised that it ended this way?
Well, there certainly was a manhunt, and what we know about Luigi is that he didn't have any cover-up, really. So there was no mask that kind of shield his identity. And we live in a world with social media where things go viral very quickly. And so there is that aspect of it where his identity was quickly seen and went viral. And also, it's not so uncommon for some of these grievance-driven kind of lone shooters to plan the crime really well, but they don't really know how to handle it post the crime. And that's where things begin to deteriorate. We see that he got hungry, he got stressed, and slowly, whatever plans he had, he wasn't very good at disguising the crime that he committed as time went on. So we also have good detective work out there. So it was a big story. His face was out there, and it's not uncommon for these kinds of crimes to unravel post the killing.
Lauren Conlon, are you shocked? Because, I mean, there was this huge manhunt. His image is posted everywhere. I know he got wind of it. And, like, I think it was even the outsiders. Was it Pony Boy or Soda Pop or somebody went and they changed the color of their hair? Like, these are obvious things you can do. Obvious. But he didn't do any of them. He looked exactly the same. He's got the same eyebrows, that same look, and he's uncovering his face in a McDonald's where he could have easily sat on the other side of the table and faced the wall to eat, but he didn't do any of that.
Yes, and what's wild to me, Vinny, is that I do not believe he actually pulled his mask off until a little bit later. So I think it's wild that somebody in the McDonald's recognized him as the, quote, CEO shooter. Additionally, I've been in court every day for these suppression hearings. They've been very, very long days, but it was commented by an officer on the stand that nobody in Altoona wears a blue medical mask or masks at all. He actually said the words, "We have antibodies." So I think that was something else that maybe made people say, who's this guy sitting in Altoona with a mask? He doesn't really belong here. But no, I mean, it's crazy. He has the mask on, he pulls it down. We hear from the first responding officer, Officer Detweiler, who asked him to pull his mask down. We hear from him that he, in his mind, knew right away that this guy was the CEO shooter. And I think Cody mentioned this. If Luigi did not give the Mark Rosario ID, they wouldn't have had a problem. Once they were trying to run that ID through 911 dispatch, they couldn't get a match. That's when a problem arose. And they said, if you give us a fake name again, you will be arrested. And that's when he told the truth. He said, I'm Luigi Mangione. And it turns out that he used the Mark Rosario ID when checking into the hostel. So that actually kind of came up with a match later on. But it was just crazy to see this all unfold, because part of the argument is they're saying to him, if you give us a fake name again, we're going to arrest you. He gives a real name, and maybe a minute later, he's getting arrested and frisked and he's getting pat down. And the defense is like, so absolutely nothing changed here, but you're going to arrest him and then search him, which again is why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Robbie Love, the other thing is, let's go back to the public, but what Lauren said there, that's interesting, right? People were suspicious because people from Altoona, we're not wearing these masks. I mean, COVID's over. We got the antibodies.
Point. That's such a great point that Lauren brought up that I don't think of, in my city mind. But when you go out to those small towns, they notice outsiders and they notice people who don't seem to fit in or belong. And you have to remember, everybody's glued to their phone. This was a very big story and created a lot of stir very early on. So we have very smart people. We have little eyes all over the place looking, watching, and assessing. So, if you see something, say something. That was certainly what happened in this small town. And yeah, it's fascinating to know that small towns certainly are aware of who fits in and who doesn't. And in this case, it really helped them to solve a crime.
Absolutely. Lauren Conlon, great to see you. You're doing great work covering all of this for everyone. We really appreciate it. Make sure you check her out. Outlier Podcast, Pop Crime TV. Dr. Robbie's going to stick around. Still to come, how strong is the prosecution's case? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation into the case against Luigi Mangione and the public assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. It's a rare case where the suspected killer has drawn lots of support. Here's the story. Once arrested and charged with the murder of Brian Thompson, Luigi Mangione's case exploded into a legal and cultural flashpoint. Prosecutors in Manhattan say surveillance footage, a gun and notebook found in a backpack, and an alleged manifesto show premeditation in the CEO's killing, enough to support second-degree murder charges despite a judge dismissing the terrorism counts. Mangione's defense has centered on constitutional challenges, arguing key evidence was seized without a proper warrant and that statements made before Miranda warnings should be excluded. In court, his lawyers have repeatedly pressed for fairness, even arguing that detention conditions and rushed public commentary may taint his presumption of innocence. Meanwhile, an unusual chorus of supporters from internet groups and protesters wearing green Free Luigi shirts to donors contributing to his defense have cast Mangione as a controversial figure rather than a straightforward villain, with some viewing him as a symbol of broader grievances against the healthcare system. Now, this case, we're coming off a case this year where there was a lot of support for an accused killer. This is the Karen Reed trial. But in that case, the supporters of Karen Reed believed that she was wrongfully accused and was innocent. In this case, some of the supporters, maybe not all of them, but some of the supporters are supporting him because he committed this killing, according to them. It's really different. But let's get back to the evidence, because this is going to be a trial. Cody Thomas still with us. Cody, let's dive into the evidence. What does the evidence show us about his alleged planning of this murder?
Well, Vinny, the evidence does show that he allegedly set out to do this with a plan and with alleged intention. So let's walk through some of that evidence now. We begin with that to-do checklist that was found in his backpack by police. Now, that checklist, one of the bullet points on it, under the date December 5th, reads, buy black shoes, white stripe, too distinctive. Right under that, another bullet reads, change hat, shoes, pluck eyebrows, which, again, we know those distinctive eyebrows are one of the things that kind of tipped off people in that McDonald's where he was eventually arrested. Now, Vinny, he also drew these hand-drawn maps and these escape plans on these note cards in that backpack. Hand-drawn maps of Pittsburgh in the Midwest. There was also a bullet point reading, check Pittsburgh red eyes. Another one of the cards also read multiple different phrases like, keep momentum, FBI slower overnight, and break cam continuity, 3 hours off cam, exit different method, in parentheses, megabus or rail. He also wrote check reports for current situation. So one could interpret this as plans to throw off investigators as they're on his tail. And then, Vinny, of course, there was the gun and the silencer, the gun, which could show that there was a plan to shoot somebody or something. And then along with the silencer, that could imply that he wanted to keep that alleged shooting, whoever he was going to shoot, discreet. Now, Vinny, there's also the red notebook that contains the alleged manifesto. And speaking of manifesto, a judge ruled that the word manifesto cannot be used whenever this goes to trial because the judge says that will be too prejudicial to the jury.
Yeah. You can call it whatever you want. I call it a confession, the way it's written, what I read. Cody, thanks so much. So you've got all that evidence, plus all the evidence we knew about before the hearing. right? The videos, the water bottles, the checking into the hotel, the timeline that was put together in all of this, the escape route, the escape video. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. How strong is the prosecution's case here? Still with me, New York attorney Chase Brown, and joining me, former homicide detective and host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Chris McDonough. All right, Chris, you've investigated a lot of homicides. Where does this one stack up in terms of how strong the evidence is? And right now we are presuming that the jury will get to see and hear all the evidence.
Yeah, Vinny, I mean, if the jury does get to hear all the evidence, then right now the situation remains robust on paper. However, you know, you've got this premeditation plan, surveillance footage, you've got irrefutable visual circumstantial evidence, and throw the fake IDs in, that shows us deliberate flight and or preparation to flight.
You know, Chase, when I look at this, I'm a former prosecutor like you, and you know, there's a lot of cases we cover on Court TV where I look at the evidence and I say, okay, this is going to be a challenge for prosecutors because of the evidence. Looking at this evidence, I'm like, I feel like you have everything that you would ever want as a prosecutor. You can say, I've got direct evidence, I've got circumstantial evidence, I've got video evidence, I've got audio evidence, I've got everything that I need. Am I missing something here? Or is this like a prosecutor's dream in terms of the evidence?
Absolutely. I'm going to take that pay cut and I'm going to go back to the prosecution on this case and be able to make the prosecution arguments here. I mean, they do have everything, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear, you know, down the line at the trial that they have more stuff that they haven't shown yet. I mean, there's the phone work that they could do with cell towers and any electronic tracking that they maybe have not presented yet is always very, very important. I mean, they found the gun, they found documents that go to the planning. I mean, and you know, again, the argument from the defense that I would try and put forward is identification. He's not the one who actually did this, but now you find him the same person with the murder weapon, with documents tracking him directly to that day and stuff he did. So this is a prosecution case all the way. The defense, you know, they're going to use this hearing as a discovery process. They're going to get as much as they can to set them up for trial and obviously, you know, fight the suppression. But it's a prosecution case all the way, in my opinion.
Yeah, Chris, you know, if you compare this to the Idaho 4 killer, right? He made one mistake. It was a doozy, right? It was an absolute doozy. But it seemed like his planning much better than this alleged planning that took place by Mangione. And, you know, the Idaho 4 guy, he studied criminology, but he's not like an Ivy Leaguer. Like, what is it about the Ivy Leaguer? Is he like book smart and street stupid? What do you think?
Well, you know, to get taken down by almost a Happy Meal at McDonald's just kind of tells us all we need to know. You know, sometimes the elevator doesn't go to the top floor with these guys. And for us, that's job security, Vinny.
You got me, Chris. You got me. He got taken down by Happy. Chase, what's your take on him? Because there was so much planning, but so many things that were wrong, like the flirting with at the hostel, the using the same ID at the hostel that you decide to give to the cops at the McDonald's in Altoona. Like, now we've just connected you to the hostel. I mean, to me, every possible stupid mistake you can make, he made. And carrying the murder weapon with you. What criminal keeps the murder weapon days later?
I think he wanted to get caught. It's beginning to seem that way. I think that he did what he set out to do, and that was it. He may have made some attempts to avoid getting caught, but he has the intelligence, and if you're trying to avoid getting caught, you're going to dispose of everything possible. You're going to get further away than Pennsylvania 5 days later. You're going to be across the country. You're going to be in a different country. I mean, you're going to make a lot better efforts to get out. I think that he set out to do what he did, and he wanted to get caught at that point, or he didn't really care if he got caught, because there's no way he took it seriously not getting caught, for that matter.
Yeah, although after his arrest, I would like to see whether or not, you know, what he was thinking, you know, like, is it like, because he does seem kind of calm in the moment, but that first arrest, we did see him screaming in a moment. I don't know. We'll find out, though. We'll find out when this trial goes forward. Chris McDonough, great to have you. You just threw me off today. You just hit me from left field with that one. That was fantastic. Chase Brown, great to have you on. Coming up next, should prosecutors be worried about the potential jury?
Luigi single-handedly brought us together and united us in the U.S. And I hope he understands that.
The disappearance of mother Anna Walsh.
Her husband now charged with her murder.
All eyes on this accused killer.
Mr. Walsh was suspecting his wife of having an affair.
The massive trail of evidence.
This incredible timeline of Google searches.
It shows everything that was in his mind.
He searched how long before a body starts to smell.
The disappearance of Anna Walsh murder trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
I'll be honest with you, after meeting and speaking with the folks up in Massachusetts, I understood the Karen Reed support and the Karen Reed movement, and then we watched the trial and we saw what happened. This one's a little bit more difficult to fully understand what is going on in this Free Luigi movement. Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. So what are we hearing from the people who are out there supporting him?
Well, Vinny, as they have been for the past year, they are still very much supporting him, still very much so on his side. And Vinny, interestingly enough, some are saying that this whole situation is more so about the justice system and the healthcare system versus Luigi Mangione himself. Take a listen to some of them.
I really felt like it was important to be here, not only to accurately report back to supporters that can't be here today, but also to be able to feel the energy in the room and really experience the defense team in action. As Gen Z, I need the system to change, to shift in order to feel like I have a future in this country, and so I've been getting very politically active to make that happen. We basically slept in the tent for most of it, or rested in the tent, but it's always a good time on the line, even if you're suffering, because everyone has like fun stories, and by this time we all kind of know each other.
When he was picked up initially by the police, he wasn't Mirandized. They called his notebook a manifesto. So what we have is a human being whose right to a fair, unbiased trial has been tarnished from the get-go.
He should be treated like a human, not some animal in a zoo. He deserves to be treated with human rights, not be violated, to show that he is not alone. People are out here caring about him and supporting him.
It's important to be here all the time to remind the public and the media the death penalty, it kills people. What needs to also be understood is that the death penalty makes other punishments like life in prison seem reasonable. It throws off our sense of proportionality.
So, Vinny, based off of these people, based off what we've seen for months, I don't imagine that these supporters will let up anytime soon, especially the ones online on social media.
Yeah. I think someone had to tell the guy about the death penalty. They don't have it in New York. It's only in the federal case, not in the state case. But we'll have to go remind him. Thanks so much, Cody. Great reporting tonight. Okay, what really struck me there, the woman who was saying, I'm becoming politically active, like seeing this case as politics rather than cold-blooded murder. It's not a murder case, this is about politics. What? That brings us to the final question in our investigation this hour. Should prosecutors be worried about the potential jury? Because there's a large proportion of people that have similar thoughts, go online for 5 minutes, walk around the streets of New York, go to outside the courthouse. Let's bring back in attorney David Gelman, psychotherapist Dr. Robbie Ludwig. Okay, I'm going to start with Dr. Robbie. It really struck me. I've become politically active. This isn't a political race. Yeah. This is a murder case, a murder trial. Wow, that's a different way to look at it. What's going on here, Dr. Robbie?
It is an interesting way to look at this case. And what we see is Luigi Mangione has become a folk hero of sorts, an anti-hero, somebody who is standing up for others who won't stand up to the system, the healthcare system that seems to be broken or unfair. So this murder case is being merged with something else, which it's really not about. And so we see the complications here, how a person, if they are unhappy with healthcare, the healthcare system, having healthcare at all, they might see Luigi Mangione in a very different light. And although, you know, during the jury process, it's easy enough to weed out people who are obviously prejudiced in this way, you can't always know how people feel unconsciously and might see this from a symbolic way, almost like symbolic justice, and lose empathy for the person who was killed here.
David Gelman, should prosecutors be worried here? Because it's not about 12 of these folks ending up in the jury. You just need one, and you can't get a conviction. What are your thoughts here?
Hell yes, the prosecution should be worried about a jury pool like this. You're exactly right. This is a folk hero they're looking at now. That woman who was on the who was just on, the young lady who said, you know, I'm getting more involved in politics. How do you possibly think this is political? It's not political at all. And you have an individual who was murdered in cold blood, and they are saying, well, it's justified because of the healthcare system. Two different things altogether. I really call this the Netflix effect. You know, Netflix and all these other services, they have all these documentaries like Menendez brothers, Mangione, all these different serial killers, and they're giving them all this publicity. And all it is doing is potentially making this jury pool tainted. Because if you just have one, like you said, Vinny, one juror, who is hiding their feelings, but they know deep down inside, they want to do everything they can to make sure that Mangione is found not guilty or have a mistrial. That's a huge win for them. And I don't know how you're going to be able to stop that potentially. How are you going to actually vet them? It's going to be very difficult. Yeah, especially if they're on a mission. We have about 30 seconds left here, Dr. Robbie. When I go online and talk about this case, and most of my followers are pretty hardcore law and order people. This case, there's a portion of them, whether it's 5%, 20%, whatever it is, they are like, free Luigi. They're saying it.
You know, sometimes when people are good looking and intelligent and seem to stand for something good, there can be a lot of confusion out there between what good is and what, you know, murder is. And so I think we're seeing that merge in this case, and hopefully, you know, the right determination will be made here.
Yeah, and I hope it's just based on the evidence and nothing else, as always. Big thank you, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, David Gelman. Great to have you on. This trial will be a big deal. The world will be watching. Well, sort of. New York and the federal system prohibit cameras from the courtroom, so no one except those who stand in line all night will actually see the trial, which in 2025 is absurd. There's enough distrust of our government as it stands. The least that the judicial branch can do is open up the doors, turn on the cameras. So when the verdict comes in, the public will understand it and trust it. The public is entitled to it. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.